Hey guys, it's Safi and welcome back to my channel for a new video. I am going to attempt to do a line tutorial for you guys, just some tips and tricks to help you guys like they've helped me. You don't have to do it the way I do it. I do mine this way. Everybody else has a different way of doing it. So yeah, I just seen some around on the internet and I was like, I could do one. Because some tricks aren't applicable to people. Like quite a few are like you have to do lines consistently and fully in one stroke, and I can't do that half the time. Like I feather my lines quite a bit, so I just wanted to show you guys my tips and tricks and hopefully this helps. I kind of cut the footage a little bit just because I wanted to show two differences. So when you use Sai, there is like a little option called a stabilizer that's right up here in the top left, and so I usually sketch in a stabilizer 0 like this. Oops, I need my pen. Oopsies. I usually sketch in like a stabilizer 0 because it just, you get this straight up image that you want and that your hand produces. And then when I go in line, just because my hands aren't always the best, and as you can notice, the lines are a bit wonky, a bit janky, like you see a few issues in the lines, and the lines don't look as smooth as they could be. So I go up to the stabilizer and I drag it down to the 15. You don't always have to drag it down to 15. Sometimes people find a nice happy medium. They find it in the 10 or something. Or you can go, so like a 15, like it just smooths out your lines a bit more. Then say a 0. So if I were to just draw a circle here, this one was done 15. It looks nicer and smoother. But if I were to do it in a 0, like it goes through like as much pressure as you did it and everything. And depending on how smooth you drew it, it comes out smooth or it comes out a bit janky. I do my lining from the outside of the character inwards, and I've only started recently doing it, but I noticed that when you do it that way, it kind of like smooths out the whole outside, so the focus is on the inside, and so you can do it differently. So I'm just gonna quickly line out the outside and then we'll get back to like details. So that's my outside. And if you notice from already, even though I have a gap here, do you notice there's a nicer curvature to the head compared to the 0. So the curve is nicely done, and if you also noticed, you don't have to do all your lines in one stroke unless you're confident enough to do it. I feather my strokes a lot and there's no problem with it. You can always erase a line you didn't like or just redo it until you find that you like it. So yeah, so even though the line weight there isn't fully the same, it still has like a nicer effect than it does here. And don't ever be afraid to change a line thickness as you go along. I do quite a bit. Just when I do the outside, it's very the same weight. But when I go in towards the to the rest of the lines, the line weight differs, and there's no problem with that because line weight difference helps the artwork. So I'll just quickly the inside lines, and then we'll see the difference at the end, and then I'll just point out some key factors as I go along. So just as you go along with lining, some parts, like obviously I have one line here that's thicker than this line coming out, but there's also some ways where you want the line connection to be thicker, and that actually just helps like the lines to move along, and like you can tell when there's a complete difference in lines or not. Like also here you notice that like the curve here is very bold and then it slithers down into the rest of the ear shape. It just helps a little bit with like the definition. So if we go back over to here, you notice that like the entire ear curve is exactly the same, and in a way like it defines the ear too much from the hair. Like when you do it here, you can tell that, oh yeah, there's the ear, but here it's kind of like, oh, is that, you know, connected through the hair, or is it just balding out from the hair? Because usually when you see ears with the hair, it usually like is hidden within the hair a bit more, so the line weight to me is always a bit thinner. So when I usually line the ears a lip like a thinner in line weight than it is to the hair. I hope that makes sense. And you don't always have to go off your sketch. Like, your sketch is there to be a sketch, but you don't always have to follow it completely unless you like to refine your sketches to where that's how you want it to look. For me, I like to sketch and then as I'm lining, changing it all up. Like, artwork is very dependent on line weight, especially if line is one of the major things you're doing. For comics, line weight is super important, especially if you like the manga and anime scene. Like, line weight is very crucial to those artworks because even the littlest detail and like shows so much in an artwork. But this is just how I do things. Obviously, you don't have to do it the same way. I just do mine in this, you know, this different way. And I've done this for a couple of years now, so like, don't think that like, just because I do it this way that everybody does it this way. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, don't feather your lines because it doesn't look good in the end. Like, I've seen beautiful artwork be made with a stabilizer 0. I can't do it personally because my hands and my lines just, I feel like they don't look as pretty. So like, even from this difference, you can obviously, there's quite a difference between each one. This one has like bolder lines, like the lines are bolder like over there compared to here where I actually thinned it out just a little bit, because here when I drew it thinly, it looked very, very janky and the lines didn't smooth the way I wanted it to, so I just put a bolder line. And there's nothing wrong with putting a bolder line into artwork. I do it quite a lot when I do non-digital artworks, just because my line work didn't go the way I wanted and you have nothing else to do. So you just take, you know, your pen and you just make it darker. And I'll just show you a quick effect on at the end, just to make that without having to go over it several times. Also, if you're like me and like you don't want to like ruin the lines that you've already done because you'll mess it up with like the face or something, new layer. That's all you do, is you put in a new layer. And then I draw it underneath and then erase. And it's the easiest thing for me because it's just so much easier than doing it and then realizing that you've made a mistake and having to erase, and then you lose the quality of your line. So when I'm finished with lines, I just merge them all together because that's just the easiest way for me. And then there's thunder if you guys hear it at all. But yeah, so if I put... But yeah, so that's just like the way, like it's different depending on how you draw with a sketch. So with a 0, to me, the line work doesn't look as clean, if that makes sense. Like, it looks like, you know, there's issues going throughout it. So if I just take my red, like, and I'll go back to 0 because it's easier for me. There, like there's a little dot of stuff. My line went too far. My line went too far. The line didn't connect together. Obviously, like, this cross looks more droopy than this one. There's a lot of things that, like, it just depends on how good you're at lining. Like, I'm not saying I am a terrible liner because I line in a 0. I'm just saying that because I found that little helpful tip with the stabilizer, that it was easier to make nicer and cleaner lines. Yeah, like, that's the only difference. Like, if you notice with the 0, the line thickness is pretty much almost the same unless I'm doing these little details. Like it's really thickly done, while over here there's like a nice mixture of line weights. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the easy trick to like put a nice back, like a black bold slash thing to the back is literally just to, I'm gonna go back to a 15 and just grabbing, that wasn't my black. Oopsies. But literally just grabbing what you take, making a border around the area you want it to be. It doesn't matter if it's thicker, if it's thinner, wherever you go. And then I just connect it here. And then you take your paint bucket, make sure that there's no gaps between your liner and that, and then paint bucket. And then I'll just finish coloring this in. And you have this nice black border. Oh, I didn't do a little bit. But then you just have that nice black border behind it that gives a nice shadow effect. So this is just a couple tips and tricks that I know. Like, I suck at like explaining. But these are just a couple things that I have learned over time, and I hope this was easy to see. I'm sorry again for it being so sucky, and like, I don't know how to explain what I do, but I hope it just helps in any way possible. Also, another thing to note is that I don't do a lot of lines when I initially line, just because when I shade, I do a lot more of the fabric folding and the hair sections when I'm shading. So I don't like to put as much detail into the line work as I used to. I used to love putting in detail, but and it's really good if you want to do like black and white comics, to put as much detail as you want and then gray tones over the top when you do it that way. But because I like shading a specific way, I slowly have just putting less and less details into hair and stuff. Like, even I still do hair like, I still do hair like this a lot, but here it just went a bit more simplified, but it looks a lot nicer at the same time. So it all just depends on how you're feeling when you line. But I hope this helped you guys in any way. This is just my dorky way of how I line. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, or whatever you want to do, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye! What to talk about. So yeah,